Hi, I'm Matt with Synergy Manufacturing. In today's video, I want to talk to you about tie rod ends, kind of the anatomy, why we build them that way, and how to tell if you have a bad tie rod end. So here at Synergy Manufacturing, we have three basic type of tie rod ends we like. We have our high misalignment multi-plane tie rod end, our high misalignment single plane tie rod end, and a low misalignment single plane tie rod end. Each of these different type of tie rod ends have the same basic parts. There is a housing that has a bearing on the inside surface, a ball stud that is the main primary bearing, a backup cap that holds the back of the ball stud, a preload spring, and our cap. On our high misalignment multi-plane tie rod end, when you put the ball into the cup or housing, you'll notice I can go in all the different directions. This is great for when you're pushing, pulling, and yanking. Our single plane tie rod ends, either the low misalignment or high misalignment, have a way in order to hold them from moving. They still like to go in one direction really well. The other direction, they're constrained. Our low misalignment tie rod ends are a bit beefier. There is a cam follower and a cam on the back of the ball. This is a very strong way to keep it from moving left and right. Barely moves at all, but we still have misalignment back and forth. All these are used in different applications on the car, and I'll show you that in a little bit. All right, the last little bit of the piece of puzzle is the assembly. You'll notice all of these are a little bit shiny on the top because I've had to cut them open. They are swedged together. There's a giant machine that after you put all the bits and pieces in, comes with huge hydraulic rolling arms and pushes it into a giant pile of metal that is now permanent and has a nice, tight, controlled movement. So how do these things wear out? Well, you've got a bearing that's pressed into the housing or machined into the housing, depending on the type. The ball stud, which is just another bearing surface. Then it all gets pressed together real tight, like I was saying in that swedging process. And so as this moves around, ours are metal on metal, which gives you a nice tight feel of the road, but there's always going to be a little rubbing. So as time goes on, that slowly eats into the housing, and the spring can no longer take up for it. The spec for a Jeep JL, for instance, is 20 thousandths. I'll show you how to measure that to determine if it's bad or not. So now that you see how one of these tie rod ends are made, why don't we go look at the Jeep and I can show you why we designed them to be used in certain places and show you how to tell if you have a bad one with a gauge or just by hand. So behind me, I've got our 2018 Jeep JL. This thing's our workhorse. I don't know if you've seen it. We run Pritchett, we jump it, we have a ton of fun and beat the heck out of it. It's got all of our parts on it and it's running some Performance Elite 2.5 12-inch travel shocks from Fox. And we are getting all 12 inches of travel out of it. So with that 12 inches of travel, we need to have high misalignment steering components because that axle is going to go up and down, it's going to have caster change, it's going to flex and move. So we've built our drag link with high misalignment tie rod ends. So on our drag link, on the pitman arm side, is a high misalignment single plane tie rod end. And as you can see, it's pointed down pretty nice. On the axle side is a high misalignment multi-plane. We only need to have one single plane to keep from binding, but this multi-plane lets it all move around really smooth. You will notice on all of our high misalignment single planes, there's gonna be a clunk because we have to have a little bit of extra movement to handle the amount of travel we're pulling. So if you listen, so this movement and clunk is totally normal. You're bottoming out the joint on the single plane, and we have it with a lot of misalignment, but enough to keep this rocking too far so that we can get the suspension travel and articulation out of this package. Our high misalignment drag link and joints move like they're supposed to. One of the things we keep getting asked from our tech support is, hey, my drag link glows clunk clunk. And yes, we've designed it that way so that you can pull lots of travel. On our tie rod end, since we're not really flexing it, it just goes between knuckle and knuckle, we have a low misalignment single plane. They're a little bit more robust, and you'll notice this one doesn't move nearly as much. The whole point is to make sure that this strong ram, or if it was a T-Link or any of our other products, is really strong and holding this so we don't have to worry about it flopping around. Drag link flop good. This tie rod end with a low misalignment tie rod end, don't have to worry about that. Okay, so I've talked to you a bit about, how they're designed and what they're supposed to do and move, but how do you actually tell if you have a bad one? Right here, I have a kind of run-of-the-mill mag-based dial indicator. And I have it set up so that I'm going up and down with the tie rod end, because as that ball and everything works, it's gonna wear and slowly come out and have some play. Now, the factory service manual or ALLDATA or one of those places you get data from says, hook this up in this fashion, go up and down, and you should not see this gauge move more than 0.020, 20 thousandths of an inch. If it's more than that, it's technically worn out. So if I cycle this, set it to 0 here, you'll see this dial indicator does almost a full spin. That means this tie rod end's worn out. Now before the video, I actually took this one apart with a grinder, beat it up, ground down the ball, did some really bad things to it, and then put it all back together so I could show you a dead one. So if I take this off and take to the other side, I'll show you what a brand new joint looks like. All right, so I've moved my mag-based dial indicator over to this brand new tie rod end I just installed, and if I wail on this thing as hard as I can, I'm seeing about a thousandth, maybe a half a thousandth. This one hasn't been previously beaten up by me, and I wanted to show you the difference on how you're supposed to properly test these. Now, if you think about it, when you're driving your Jeep and you're turning, sure, this isn't going up and down, but because there's a bearing on the top, a bearing on the bottom, and a ball, if this ball can move up and down, you will get a little bit of back and forth play. And I can show you that on the mag base as well, but it's not as drastic as the up and down plunge. And when you have the up and down plunge, you're no longer grabbing your steering tight, and you can get death wobble and a bunch of other problems. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you found it informative and helps you determine if you have bad tie rod ends. If you feel like you might have a bad tie rod end, go ahead and contact us at support@synergymfg.com.